Welcome students. I, Preeti Sinhal, an assistant professor at All India Sri Shivaji Memorial Society, College of Hotel Management and Catering Technology, Pune. In this session, we are going to learn about microbes in industrial food processing. The objective of this chapter is to learn about what is microbes, to learn about microbes in industrial food processing, to learn use of microbes fermentation using the example of bread and cheese production. So in this session, we are going to learn how fermentation takes place in bread and in cheese making. Today we are going to dive into the fascinating world of industrial food processing and the incredible role that microorganisms play in it. Specifically, we will explore how these tiny beings contribute to the production of two beloved food items, bread and cheese. I hope you agree with that we all love these two products. And since childhood, we have seen the Tom and Jerry fighting for the cheese. Microorganisms in industrial food processing. So imagine a bustling food factory where microscopic organisms are the unsung heroes. These microorganisms, including bacteria, yeast and mold, are instrumental in transforming raw ingredients into the delicious foods we enjoy every day. Now let's talk about the role of microorganisms in bread production. Imagine waking up to the smell of freshly baked bread, warm and inviting. Whenever we pass through a bakery, how our nostrils filled with a nice fresh aroma of a fresh baked bread, right? And we feel like we want to spread a nice dollop of butter on it, or we want to have a soup with it, something like that, right? So that's the bread I'm talking about. We have seen the spongy, soft bread, but how it has been created or how it is obtained, let's see that. So that aroma, that texture, thanks to the yeast, is the yeast that transforms a simple mixture of flour, water and sugar into a fluffy loaf that comforts and nourishes us. It's a staple food enjoyed by people all around the world. Microorganisms, particularly yeast, are crucial in the process of bread making. They work their magic during fermentation, helping the dough to rise and giving the bread its airy texture and delicious flavor. Now let's understand what is fermentation. You must be wondering what it is. So let's solve that. One of the most significant aspects of the microorganisms food relation is fermentation. So now let's understand that. Fermentation is a metabolic process where microorganisms break down carbohydrates or other organic compounds to produce energy in the absence of oxygen. This process is harnessed in food production to create a wide array of fermented foods, which includes yogurt, cheese, bread, beer, wine, sauerkraut and kimchi and many more. At home we see that idli and dhokla, idli, dosa, all these are the results of the fermentation. Microorganisms involved in fermentation such as lactic acid bacteria, yeast and mold transform the flavor, aroma and texture of food, making it more palatable and nutritious. let's talk some example here for the better understanding. So let's understand fermentation process in bread production. Fermentation is like a silent dance which is happening within the dough, orchestrated by the yeast. When yeast is added to the dough, it feasts on sugar which is present in flour, and we can add a little bit extra from outside also, releasing carbon dioxide gas as a byproduct. This gas gets trapped in the dough, causing it to rise and giving bread its characteristics, light and fluffy texture. Fermentation is like the heartbeat of the bread making, and yeast is a conductor. Now let's understand how many types of yeast are there which is used in bread production. Yeast is available in a different form also. So majorly there are different. Over here I will explain some of the yeast which is used in, or few of the yeast which is used in bread production, which is include baker's yeast. It is, the biological name is Saccharomyces cerevisiae. This is most commonly used yeast and is available in various forms. For an example, active dry yeast, which you must have seen in small rounded flakes, I would say more of, or round little bit dots kind of a structure you found. Then there is a instant yeast. That is also available in dry. There is a fresh yeast which is you get in the block form, which is majorly used in all the bakeries. Then next comes the type of yeast is wild yeast. Sometimes bakers are naturally occurring wild yeast from sourdough starter. That wild yeast is known as, once it is ready, it is known as starter, which is used in artisan bread making. Artisan bread making, here I'll explain a little. In that there is no commercial yeast has been used, and the chef prepare the starter by using the flour and water and maturing it for around 10 to 15 days by feeding them frequently the flour. The natural environment, the pH and the microorganism which is present in the environment, those all work together and it starts preparing the starter, which is later will be used for bread making, and it will give the nice fermentation to the dough. It results in unique flavors and textures. As you understand by the name sourdough, it is not sour. It is a little slight tangy and sourish flavor to it. While yeast is the star of the show in bread making, other microorganisms also play supporting roles. Lactic acid bacteria may be present in sourdough starters, contributing to flavor development and dough fermentation. Now, once you understood the types or different types of yeast used in the bread production, let's understand the role of microorganism in cheese production. We have understood how bread achieve its spongy and light and fluffy texture, right? A light and fluffy texture, and how it gets its nice aroma and its flavor. Now let's understand the next product, which is cheese. So let's turn our attention to cheese, a delicious dairy product loved for its rich flavors and textures. Microorganisms including bacteria and mold are essential in the cheese making process. They help coagulate milk proteins, ripen the cheese and develop its characteristics, taste and aroma. So how is the fermentation process takes place in cheese production? You must be wondering, right? So cheese making is a labor of love that begins with the humble milk. Bacteria, like diligent artisans, curdle the milk, forming the basis of cheese. As cheese ages, mold adds its own unique touch, creating the distinct flavor and texture we crave. When the cheese making is in the process, the bacteria in the form of culture is added to the milk. That start working and it curdles the milk. Cheese production involves a series of fermentation and aging steps where microorganisms works their magic. Bacteria such as Lactococcus and Lactobacillus acidify the milk. That is how it gets curdles, causing it to coagulate and form curds. These curds are then pressed, salted and aged, allowing beneficial mold and bacteria to develop complex flavors and textures. Now let's talk about some of the types of cheese and microorganisms. We all know that there are very different types of cheese are available in the market. But every cheese has its own story. It also has its own cast of microorganisms. From the soft embrace of brie to the sharp tang of cheddar, each cheese owes its character to the microbial community that nurtures it. Different types of cheese are made using specific strains of microorganisms, each contributing to the unique characteristics of cheese. For example, brie and camembert. These soft ripened cheese are inoculated with mold spores such as Penicillium candidum, which creates a soft, creamy texture and distinctive white rind. If I talk about one or two more examples, like cheddar and Swiss, these are hard cheeses, are inoculated by lactic acid bacteria, which contribute to their tangy flavor and crumbly texture. So likewise, there are many more other cheese varieties which are obtained by these specific strains of microorganisms. Now let's understand that what are the health benefits of these fermented foods. Fermented foods like bread and cheese offer numerous health benefits. They contain beneficial microorganisms. Fermented foods aren't just delicious, they are also good for us, packed with probiotics, vitamins and enzymes, which supports our digestive health, boosts our immunity and makes us feel nourished from the inside out. It also enhances flavor. Microbial fermentation imparts unique and complex flavor to food products, which enhance their palatability. It improves digestibility. So what happens during the fermentation? It breaks down the complex nutrients into simpler forms, making them easier to digest and absorb. It extends the shelf life. The acidic environment created during the fermentation inhibits the growth of harmful bacteria, thus preserving the food for longer periods. You must have seen the cheese, different type of cheese has a different shelf life. Health benefit. Fermented food contains, as I already told you in the previous slide, it contains probiotics, which are beneficial microbes that promote gut health and strengthen the immune system. So these are some of the health benefits of fermented foods. Now we will come to the conclusion. So I would like to say that microbes play a vital role in industrial food processing through fermentation, contributing to the production of a wide range of flavorful and nutritious food. Understanding the diverse application of microbes in food processing can help optimize food production practices and promote the consumption of healthy and delicious fermented foods. In this session, we have learned about the role of fermentation in the role of yeast used in bread production. In that, we have seen the types of yeast, we have seen how the fermentation processes takes. So in that, we have seen that when yeast is added to the dough, it feasts on sugar and released carbon dioxide gas as a byproduct. That gas gets trapped in the dough and causing it to rise and giving bread its characteristics light and fluffy. After that, we have learned about types of yeast and we have learned about the role of microorganism in cheese production, where we have learned that there are different bacteria used for different cheese varieties, and it involves a series of fermentation and aging steps where microorganisms work with their magic. We have also learned in that some of the types of cheeses and microorganisms like brie and camembert. In that, Penicillium candidum mold spores are used or inoculated. Then there are cheddar and Swiss, which is a hard cheese which is inoculated with lactic acid bacteria. So they contribute that tangy flavor and crumbly texture. Then we have learned about some of the health benefit. So this is how I'm concluding the session. Thank you.